Unaware his wife secretly built a $150 million empire, husband slapped her at family dinner for serving his food. Late, what she did next left them with nothing. He didn't just disrespect her. He did it in his parents' dining room, with every chair filled, every plate still warm, and every pair of eyes pretending not to see. Mark Walker leaned back in his seat like a king waiting to be served, grabbed his wife's wrist when his plate arrived a few seconds later than he wanted and in front of his entire family. He slapped her. The room froze. Forks stopped midair. No one defended her. No one even breathed. Emily Walker kept her gaze low, hiding the sting on her cheek and the quiet shift happening behind her eyes. To them, she was the polite wife who always helped, always apologized, always stayed soft. Someone with nothing important going on. Someone who didn't have a voice. What Mark didn't know was this. The woman he struck had spent years building something powerful in the dark. Every morning before the sun rose, every night after he fell asleep, Emily was quietly constructing a tech empire under her maiden name. Through carefully built trusts, she owned investment accounts, assets and properties. Even the house whose mortgage he still bragged about handling, even though the payments quietly left her accounts every month. And she had just closed a funding deal that placed her company's valuation at a staggering $150 million. While Mark mocked her little hobbies, she was the one signing investor contracts. While he sent money to another woman from the joint card he thought he controlled, that money came from accounts she secretly funded and monitored, and the night he chose to humiliate her in front of everyone was the night she stopped protecting him. This isn't just a story about a slap at dinner. It's about what happens when a man mistreats a woman he never bothered to understand and discovers too late that the ground beneath his feet was hers all along. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. If you're watching without subscribing, it's like letting Emily's strength be ignored the way they ignored her at that table. When you click that button, you stand with every quiet soul who was underestimated, dismissed, or silenced, and still rose higher than anyone expected. Please subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Emily Hayes Walker woke up with a sharp gasp, as if her mind had already been running long before her body caught up. She wasn't startled by danger. She was startled by ideas, complex ones, urgent ones, the kind that snapped her awake at 5:12 every morning. For a moment, the room looked still, peaceful, and warm. But inside her head, numbers raced, strategies formed, and decisions waited. She sat up slowly, brushing her long hair away from her face. 36 years old, quiet by nature, and soft-spoken around everyone but the people she trusted. On the outside, she was an ordinary wife, but beneath that calm, she carried a sharp mind shaped by years of preparation and quiet discipline. Emily swung her legs over the bed and reached for the slim silver laptop hidden beneath the nightstand. She didn't hide it from fear. She hid it from misunderstanding. Her husband, Mark Walker, 40 years old, liked to believe he understood everything happening in his home. But this was her world, a world he never truly noticed. The screen lit her face in a cool glow. Not social media, not shopping, charts, curves, market signals, equity projections, early morning messages from investors in different time zones. Every morning she checked the pulse of the company she built brick by brick, Hayes Tech, the quiet startup she had incorporated under her maiden name 3 years earlier. A company Mark had never asked about, never cared to understand, and never realized even existed. In his mind, if he ever thought about it at all, it was just some online work, like the freelance job she once did to help with bills. But her story didn't start in this marriage. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard, and a memory pulled her backward. She was 10, sitting at a kitchen table with her father, an accountant with tired eyes but a patient smile. He slid a notebook toward her. "Number," he told her, tapping the page, "will take you anywhere if you respect them." She remembered copying columns, learning balance sheets, practicing how money moved. Her father never had much, but he gave her something more powerful than wealth: skill, confidence, understanding. Another memory flashed in. 17-year-old Emily in the library, stacking thick finance books, reading until her eyes burned. Teachers thought she was studying for a test. She wasn't. She was studying for her life. Years later, in her 20s, a friend from graduate school, Sarah Collins, the woman who later became her lawyer, laughed across a cafe table and said, "Emily, you should start your own fund. You think like a founder." Emily had smiled politely, hiding a dream she wasn't ready to show the world. She didn't have support then. She didn't have trust. But she had knowledge. She had vision. And that was enough. Back in the present, the faint hum of the bedroom air vent blended with the soft tapping of her keys as she scanned the growth chart of her newest project. She paused, eyes narrowing. One upward spike looked sharper than expected. A good sign. A very good sign. She leaned closer, then froze. Footsteps. Her heartbeat slowed, not because she was doing anything wrong, but because she knew what came next. Confusion, questions she didn't feel like answering, and a dismissive shrug that always followed. Mark Walker pushed the bedroom door open with the casual confidence of a man who believed the world always waited on him. Once athletic, now slightly soft around the edges, he carried himself as if nothing in life required improvement. Not even him. He rubbed his eyes. "You're up early again?" Emily closed the laptop with one smooth motion, careful not to look rushed. "Couldn't sleep." Mark moved around the room without noticing the tension in the air. He never noticed much. Emily had been married to him for nearly 9 years, and in all that time, he'd never asked about her private goals. He saw her as reliable, gentle, supportive, which she was. But he mistook those things for smallness. "Hey," he said, pointing at her closed laptop, "what are you always working on so early?" The question wasn't curiosity, it was annoyance. A habit. Something he asked the way others asked about the weather, never waiting for an answer. He had already decided it was some boring side work that didn't really matter. Emily smiled softly, the way she always did when she didn't feel understood. "Just something I'm building." He nodded without interest, already looking for his phone, his socks, breakfast, always expecting her to fill the spaces he left empty. He didn't ask another question. He didn't lean closer. He didn't wonder what she meant. He simply moved on. Emily watched him walk out the bedroom door, and something in her chest tightened. Not with fear, not with anger, but with knowledge. He would never ask again. He didn't care enough to. She reopened her laptop once he disappeared down the hall. The screen's glow returned, lighting her face with determination. Her company was growing faster than expected. Opportunities were coming, wealth was rising, and Mark, he was drifting further and further away from the truth. Far below the rising chart line, a small red calendar icon blinked quietly on the corner of her screen. A reminder she hadn't opened yet. Family dinner, Sunday 6 p.m., Helen's house, sent to her and Mark by his mother a week earlier. Emily hovered her mouse over it and hesitated. Work, family, secrets, all of it pressing closer together. A subtle sign that something in her world, outside the laptop, was about to shift. The sharp crash of a cabinet slamming open cut through the kitchen like an alarm. Mark Walker stood there in the doorway, jaw tight, irritation already raging across his face, as if he'd woken up searching for something to be angry about. "What is this?" he snapped, holding up a plate. "Grease. You didn't rinse it right." His voice hit the room before his presence did. That was how he always entered. Loud first, human second. Emily, still in her soft morning clothes, turned slowly from the sink. The shock of his tone hit her, but she kept her face calm. She always kept her face calm. "It's clean, Mark. Maybe the lighting—" He cut her off with a scoff. "It's not clean. Never mind, I'll do it myself." He wouldn't. He never did. But the plate slammed into the sink anyway. The intensity of the moment hung in the air, sharp and unfair. Then, like a wave pulling back, everything softened into a quieter tension. Emily lowered her eyes not out of fear, but to gather herself. She had grown used to this version of him, short-tempered, dismissive, easily offended. Years ago, he hadn't been like this. Or maybe she just hadn't seen it clearly. Love had a way of making harsh edges look rounded. She wiped her hands on a towel and stepped back. Mark's mother, Helen Walker, 64 years old with a voice that could slice stone, entered from the living room. She had let herself in early that morning with the spare key she insisted on having, saying she wanted to help Emily keep the house in order. She was the kind of woman who believed tradition was scripture, and any woman who challenged it was rebellious. What did she do now? Helen asked, as if trouble followed Emily everywhere, instead of the other way around. Mark replied, "The usual. She doesn't pay attention." Helen's eyes landed on Emily. "A woman's place," she said slowly, "is making the home peaceful. Men deal with enough outside. They shouldn't come home to disorder." Emily felt the words hit her like small stones. She swallowed, quietly, gracefully, because giving them nothing was the only way to protect herself. "I understand," she said, though she understood much more than they believed. She turned back to the sink, moving with steady calm. While they complained loudly, she softened her breathing and centered herself. This was a practiced skill, protecting her mind from chaos around her. But beneath her quiet surface, something simmered. Not anger, not yet. Something closer to recognition. A flash of memory rose inside her with sharp clarity. Years ago, right after Mark lost his job at the sales firm that once paid most of their visible bills, he had spiraled into long days on the couch and long nights blaming the industry, the market, and anyone but himself. During that time, Emily took remote work editing financial documents, balancing books for small businesses, and tutoring online. She worked quietly, often into early morning, earning enough to keep their bills paid when his severance ran out. She remembered sitting at the same kitchen table, eyes burning from lack of sleep, when Mark passed by her without looking up from his phone. "You should sleep earlier," he said. "No thank you, no appreciation, just criticism." And she had swallowed that too. Back in the present, the house felt smaller than ever. Mark's footsteps thudded down the hall as he searched for his keys. Helen muttered something about women these days. Emily inhaled deeply, exhaled quietly. She didn't defend herself. She didn't argue. She didn't break. Instead, she reached for her phone on the counter, if only to distract her mind for a moment. A message preview popped onto the screen, not for her phone, but for Mark's. His device sat charging nearby, unlocked for once. Emily hadn't planned to look at it. She hadn't even meant to glance. But the words in the preview flashed bright. "Are you coming over tonight? She won't know." Emily's breath stilled in her throat. Her hand froze midair. She didn't open the phone. She didn't touch it. She didn't gasp or whip around or let pain show. She simply blinked once, slow, controlled. Then she set her own phone down, picked up a dish towel, and kept working. Her mind didn't scream. It organized. Quietly, carefully, she stored those 8 little words deep in her memory, in the same mental drawer where she kept every hurt, every pattern, every sign she once excused. Behind her, Mark walked back into the kitchen. "Did you hear me?" he asked sharply. Emily looked up, calm as still water. "Yes, Mark." He didn't notice a thing, not the shift in her eyes, not the silence turning heavy. As he turned away, Emily's gaze drifted back to his phone, still glowing, still unlocked, still whispering truths he didn't think she would ever see. Just before the screen went dark, another notification pulsed gently. A small calendar reminder he had set for dinner, 8 p.m., with no details and no invite sent to her. She wasn't supposed to see that either, but she did, and she would remember both. The night the truth finally snapped into place began with a violent burst of sound. Emily's laptop vibrating against the wooden desk as a flood of notifications hit all at once. The sudden noise cut through the quiet house like a warning. It was near midnight, the walls still, the air heavy, and Mark asleep in the next room after another evening of dismissive comments and unexplained absences. Emily steadied the laptop with one hand, heart racing not from fear but from urgency. Numbers were moving fast, and decisions had to be made. The intensity of the moment pressed against her chest, then slowly softened, shifting into calm, deep focus. She inhaled deeply and leaned forward, letting the familiar glow of the screen pull her into the world she had built in secret, her empire. Piece by piece, memory by memory, the path unfolded inside her mind. The beginning had been nothing glamorous. It started 3 years earlier, on another exhausting night, when Mark had been sitting in the living room playing games late into the night. He had lost his job then, laid off after ignoring warnings about performance, and instead of using the time to rebuild, he drowned himself in entertainment. Emily remembered him shouting at the game, laughing with strangers online through his headset, while she sat at the kitchen table beside piles of unpaid bills. That night, frustration became inspiration. She opened her old notes, ideas she'd sketched since her early 20s, scribbled between shifts, saved on scraps of paper. Ideas she never believed she had time or strength to pursue. But watching Mark waste his nights while she carried the weight of their life pushed her off the edge of hesitation. She whispered to herself, "If no one is going to build our future, I will." And she began. The second memory arrived like a soft but firm touch. Sarah Collins, the lawyer friend from her graduate days, sitting across from her in a quiet cafe. Sarah was smart, sharp-tongued, and fiercely loyal. When Emily told her she was thinking of starting a business, Sarah didn't laugh. She leaned in and said, "Then let's do it right." Sarah guided her through every step, an LLC under Emily's maiden name, Hayes, a trust that protected the company assets under her sole control. Silent partners who believed in her idea, but stayed off the paperwork by choice. A parent company structure that separated personal life from business life entirely, so that anything built from her skills stayed legally hers. Sarah warned her gently, "This is clean, legal, and strong, but Mark won't understand the separation. Keep your documents safe and don't mix his name into the business." Emily had nodded, remembering how Mark reacted to anything he didn't control, with irritation and accusations. The structure was set. All she had to do now was build. The next memory rose like warm firelight. Emily spent endless nights teaching herself how to code simple prototypes. She watched tutorials until dawn. She sketched designs across notebook pages. She tested ideas again and again, chasing the one that could grow. She had always been brilliant. Her father knew it, Sarah knew it, but Mark had never looked deeply enough to see it. When the prototype gained traction, she pitched it quietly to early investors through private online meetings. She met them while Mark was at the gym pretending to network, or in the hours he spent gaming and scrolling through his phone. Mark never noticed because he never paid attention to the world outside himself. He would walk past her late at night and ask, "Are you really still doing that hobby?" She would smile softly and say yes. While forms for seed funding were open on the screen, he never bothered to look at. Slowly, painfully, steadily, she climbed from idea to product, from product to company, from company to something far bigger than she ever imagined. She hired a small early team, brought in an advisor or two, formed a board, and still came home to cook dinner as if nothing had changed. Back in the present, Emily stared at the latest message flashing across her screen. A notification from her board. Series C funding approved. The number beside it made her breath catch. Valuation now, $150 million. Her hand rose to her mouth, covering the small breath of disbelief. Not shock. She had worked for this. But the reality of it still pressed against her chest like a weight she wasn't ready to set down. She glanced toward the dark hallway. Mark was asleep, unaware that the woman he ignored, criticized and underestimated, had just become the owner of a rapidly growing empire. She didn't need applause. She didn't need validation. But she felt something stir inside her, something steady and powerful, a quiet understanding that life was changing faster than he realized. She closed the laptop carefully, the light fading into darkness. For a moment, she sat in silence, letting the truth settle into her bones. Then her phone buzzed, one soft vibration. She expected another business alert. It wasn't. It was a message from an unknown contact, a name she recognized from Mark's phone earlier. Lily. Attached to it was a simple line. "Don't forget tomorrow night. Same restaurant, 8 p.m. She still has no idea. A reminder about a dinner invitation she was never told about. But that was already booked on Mark's secret calendar. The shouting hit Emily like a slap of cold air the moment she stepped into the hallway. Mark's voice, sharp, irritated, and too loud, cut through the stillness of the house with unexpected force. "No, I told you not to call me right now," he barked. The tone was too urgent, too angry, too personal. Emily froze beside the wall, heart thudding as Mark stormed through the back door and stepped outside into the yard. He slammed it behind him, making the glass rattle. She could still hear his muffled voice on the other side. rising and falling in the sharp rhythm of a man arguing with someone he shouldn't be arguing with. The intensity of his anger pressed into the room, then slowly softened into a quieter, colder unease. Emily stood completely still, her breath thinning into a slow, controlled pattern. She didn't need to hear the words. She didn't need to confirm the suspicion. The tone alone spoke volumes. She turned away from the door, her chest tightening as she walked back toward the living room. Her mind replayed the message she saw earlier. She won't know. Now the voice outside connected the dots she had tried to ignore. She sat on the sofa, hands resting gently on her knees, forcing herself to breathe in and out, deep and steady, the way she always did when life tried to break her spirit. After a few minutes, Mark walked back inside, face turned away as he slipped his phone into his pocket. He didn't look guilty. He didn't look nervous. He looked careless. "Who was that?" Emily asked softly, keeping her tone level. "Work," Mark replied too quickly. "Stressful stuff. You wouldn't understand." He kissed her forehead out of habit, not affection, then moved toward the bedroom. Emily watched him walk away, a strange numbness settling over her. She didn't confront him. She didn't ask again. She didn't raise her voice. Confrontation never opened truth with Mark. It only opened anger. Later that evening, while doing laundry, her fingers grazed the collar of his shirt. Something smudged against her thumb, a faint, rosy line. Lipstick. Not her shade. Too bright. Too bold. She stared at it until her heartbeat steadied again. Then she folded the shirt neatly, placing it exactly where he expected it to be. She never let him see the alarm in her mind. She moved carefully like someone handling thin glass. Emily walked to her office and opened her laptop, not for work, but from instinct. She navigated to the joint financial account she maintained for household expenses. It was nearly empty. Again, she scrolled deeper. She knew the pattern by now. Every month, she quietly transferred part of her consulting income and business distributions into that joint account so the bills would never bounce, letting Mark believe the money came from his past savings or old contacts. This time, several small transfers over the past 2 months caught her eye. Not large enough to attract attention, not large enough to seem suspicious to someone careless, but large enough for her to feel the truth in her bones. They were sent to a woman named Lily Adams. The name meant nothing to her until it suddenly meant everything. Emily didn't gasp. She didn't cry. She simply took a screenshot, saved it to a hidden folder, then closed the laptop gently. Her hands were steady, but her spirit felt heavier than it had in years. She reached for her phone and dialed Sarah Collins, her lawyer and oldest friend, someone who knew Emily's mind better than anyone. Sarah answered on the second ring, bright and awake as always. "Emily, everything okay?" Emily hesitated. Not long, just long enough for the weight of the moment to land. "If I needed to protect myself," she said quietly, "hypothetically, how fast can assets be frozen or protected so no one else can drain them?" There was no confusion in Sarah's silence, only concern. "Emily," she said slowly, voice firm, "what happened?" Emily closed her eyes. "Just answer me," Sarah exhaled. "For accounts in your name and the business, I can send instructions tonight. Within 2 hours, no one but you will be able to move real money. Joint accounts that you fund can be shifted under your control too, but only if you say so. 2 hours. Enough time to lock down everything that was truly hers. More than enough time to change her entire life." Emily whispered, "Thank you," then hung up before her voice could crack. She stared at the dark screen of her phone, fingers curling slightly. A quiet certainty settled inside her, a shift so subtle she barely felt it, but strong enough to change everything. In the distance, through the thin walls of the house, Mark's ringtone buzzed again. Softer this time, with a name she wasn't supposed to know blinking against the dark. Lily. A name she would hear again soon, at a dinner she never agreed to attend. 2 evenings later, the scream of Mark's name tore through the hallway the moment Emily stepped into his parents' home. His mother's sharp voice carried all the way from the dining room. "Mark, tell her the food is getting cold." The intensity hit Emily like a hot wave. She hadn't even taken off her coat. She hadn't had a moment to breathe after the investor follow-up call that ran over time. the one where her board discussed next steps now that the company was officially valued at $150 million. She stood frozen for half a second near the front door, laptop bag hanging from her shoulder, heart still racing from numbers, projections, deadlines. But it didn't matter why she was late. Not here. Not to them. She walked into the dining room trying to steady her breath. The room smelled of baked dishes and heavy spices, the air thick with voices and opinions that belonged to everyone but her. Mark Walker sat at the head of the table, already eating bread, leaning back like a man entertaining an audience. His father and mother sat on either side. His sister, Marcia, 32, always comparing, always judging, smirked when she saw Emily walk in. "You're late," Mark said loudly as if announcing a crime. "We've been waiting." "I'm sorry," Emily replied softly. "My meeting ran—" "No one cares about that," Marcia interrupted. "We're all busy." Emily didn't respond. She walked into the kitchen, set her laptop bag down where no one would notice it, and began preparing plates. She moved quickly, carefully. She had done this before. Too many times. She carried the plates to the dining room. Everyone received their food. Everyone except Mark. She had saved his plate for last because he always expected it warmest and freshest, and she had learned not to argue with that. But the delay was only seconds. Still, as she reached his side, he set his jaw and stiffened. His eyes, cold, irritated, followed her hand placing the plate in front of him. Then his fingers closed around her wrist. The grip was hard, sharp, a sudden shock of pressure. "What is this?" he hissed. "Everyone else has been eating. Why am I last?" His parents looked down at their plates. Marcia sipped her drink. No one said a word. Because this wasn't new. They had seen smaller versions of this, moments where Mark snapped, grabbed her arm, raised his voice. They never intervened. They called it stress or bad days or how men are. Emily opened her mouth to speak, but before words formed, his hand moved faster. The slap struck her cheek with a crack that sliced through the room. Her head jerked to the side. Time stopped. The shock was complete and cold. The kind that didn't burn, it froze. Mark's mother gasped softly but didn't stand. His father's eyes darted to the table. Marcia looked uncomfortable but silent, pressing her lips together as if silence could erase what she had witnessed. Emily touched her cheek, feeling the heat rise under her palm. But she didn't cry. She didn't tremble. She didn't break. Instead, she lifted her chin slightly, turned her face back toward him, and met his eyes with a calm so unnatural it unnerved even him. "Thank you," she whispered, voice steady. "I needed that." The room fell into a strange, suffocating silence. Mark blinked, uncertain for the first time. "What?" Emily pulled her wrist from his grip gently, not forcefully, as if his strength no longer mattered. His mother leaned forward. "Emily, dear, maybe sit down." Emily ignored her. She reached for the nearest glass of water, took a slow sip, set it down, and then walked to the empty chair opposite Mark. Her movements were measured, almost graceful. Not a single tear touched her eyes. Inside her chest, something seismic shifted. Not anger, not sadness. A door closing. And once it closed, it would never open again. She sat quietly while the family began to eat again. Awkward, unsettled, pretending everything would be normal if they just didn't acknowledge the moment. Under the table, her hands were steady. Her breathing was slow. Her mind was turning gears she had kept locked away for years. Legal structures, account controls, passwords, steps she and Sarah had mapped out long ago, just in case. She looked at Mark again, not with love or fear, but with clarity. He didn't notice. He didn't even look at her. But if he had, he would have seen it. Eyes no longer filled with patience. Eyes no longer waiting for change. Eyes that had finally decided. And as she stood to collect empty plates later, something shimmering caught her eye on the table. Mark's phone screen lighting up. A message preview changed everything. Dinner tonight? Same place. She won't suspect a thing. Same number. Same Lily. Emily's hand paused midair, steady but frozen. And without moving her lips, she thought, not yet, but soon. The front door slammed behind Emily with a force she didn't plan, the sound echoing through the empty house like a warning. Her breath shook in her chest, not from fear, not from pain, but from something sharper, something clean, something final. Her cheek still burned from the slap, the red mark fading slowly, but the memory of it felt carved deeper than skin. Her fingers hovered near her face, not to touch the pain, but to remind herself that it happened, that it was real, that a line had been crossed so clearly that she no longer needed to pretend. The intensity pulsed through the room for a moment, hot, fierce, electric, before settling into a cold, focused calm. She slipped off her coat and walked straight to the study, every step measured. No trembling, no hesitation. The soft click of her heels on the hardwood floor became a countdown. She reached the old wooden desk tucked against the wall. It looked ordinary from the outside, but Emily knew better. She knelt down, reached beneath it, and pulled forward a small metal box with a lock on the front. The box was her real heartbeat. She unlocked it with a tiny silver key she kept behind a framed photo. Inside the box lay everything she had ever built: trust certificates, company ownership documents, password logs, beneficiary forms, power of attorney letters, backup drives of her entire startup, the entire skeleton of her empire. This wasn't new. She had opened this box many times before for updates or quiet checks, but tonight felt different. Tonight felt like purpose. She spread the documents across the table, the papers crisp, clean, protected. They looked nothing like the life she lived outside this room. Here the truth was written clearly. Emily Hayes owned everything. Mark Walker owned nothing that he hadn't been allowed to use. Her hands didn't shake as she reached for her phone. She scrolled through her contacts until she found the name she always trusted. Sarah Collins, her lawyer, her friend, the woman who helped her set the foundation years ago. Emily hit call. Sarah answered almost instantly. Emily? There was no small talk, no breathing room. Emily's voice came out quiet but firm. Activate everything we planned. A pause. Concern. Understanding. Sarah didn't ask why. She didn't need to. She had heard the shift in Emily's tone years ago when Emily first started building her safety nets. Just in case. Sarah exhaled and replied, On it. I'll start the asset protection steps now. No questions, no hesitation, just 2 words that turned the wheels of destruction. Emily ended the call and sat down slowly. Time felt thick as she watched the next steps unfold. Her laptop chimed repeatedly, each sound marking a part of her life locking into place. A silent montage began. Passwords changed. Emergency protocols triggered. Bank accounts under her maiden name secured with new authentication. Joint accounts she funded moved under restricted status pending separation. Property trust records opened on her screen, confirming her as the sole legal owner from the very beginning. Business shares checked and confirmed under protected trusts. Digital signatures finalizing that she alone controlled the company and all voting rights. The family phone plan, registered in her name, adjusted so only her line remained active. The house around her remained quiet. Quiet like deep water hiding dangerous depth. Quiet like the moment before a storm fully breaks. Emily leaned back in her chair, the soft glow of the screen lighting her calm expression. The part of her that once waited for love, patience, or understanding no longer existed. Only clarity remained. Meanwhile, across town, Mark sat on the edge of a couch at one of his friends' houses, scrolling through his phone without a thought in the world. He smirked at messages he shouldn't be reading, planning things he shouldn't be planning. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced down, his eyebrows pulled together. A notification glowed on the screen from his banking app. Your online access has been temporarily suspended. Please contact your bank. He stared at it, confused, tapping the screen again. And again. And again. Nothing changed. He frowned deeper, annoyance rising, but not fear. Not yet. Mark had never imagined a world where he wasn't in control. He looked around the room, irritated at the inconvenience. He had no idea the storm had already started. And somewhere in Emily's house, another silent alert blinked softly on her screen. A new digital folder opened in Sarah's secure portal with 3 words at the top. Emily Hayes, divorce. The first crack in Mark's world hit with brutal force the next afternoon. The gas station lights flickered overhead as he slid his card into the pump. The machine beeped once, then again. Then the screen flashed a bold, sharp message that punched straight into his chest. Declined. Not once. 3 times. Try again, Mark muttered to himself, jaw tightening. He slammed the card in harder, as if aggression could fix numbers. Again. Declined. A man at the next pump glanced over. Mark turned away quickly, pretending he was checking something on his phone, but a rush of heat climbed up his neck. Embarrassment, confusion, annoyance. He yanked his phone out to transfer money. The screen lit up. Before going black, he frowned and pressed the power button. Nothing. Then he looked up at the corner of the phone screen. No service, no bars, no data. His entire plan shut off. What the? He stepped back, trying to breathe, trying to understand. Intensity surged through him. His words came fast. Why is everything not working? But the chaos inside him slowly slid into cold confusion as he walked inside the station and paid with cash. He had enough for fuel, but barely. He drove off trying to calm himself, telling himself it was a glitch. That's all. A glitch. But the world didn't agree. Hours later, he pulled into the driveway of the home he believed he paid for. He opened the mailbox out of habit and froze. A thick envelope from the bank and mortgage servicer sat at the top. He tore it open, expecting an apology, an update, an explanation. Instead, property ownership and mortgage summary. Registered owner, Hayes Family Trust. Beneficiary, Emily Hayes Walker. Occupant on file, Mark Walker, non-owner. He stood completely still, the air leaving his lungs. What? His voice cracked. He read it again, then again. His name, listed only as occupant. Her name, appearing everywhere else. His head spun. Heat surged up his spine. He crushed the letter in his fist. He stormed inside, chest heaving. Emily was at the stove, stirring vegetables in a pan, her movements calm and steady as if the world was perfectly normal. Her back was relaxed, her breathing smooth. She didn't look shaken. She didn't look frantic. She looked peaceful. Mark froze in the doorway, anger twisting across his face. Emily, all my accounts, my cards, my phone, everything is freezing. My mother just called. The transfer she was expecting bounced, and the bank told her the source account is restricted. What is happening? Emily didn't turn around. She lowered the heat on the stove, lifted the pan, and slid the vegetables onto a plate. Only then did she speak, but her voice was calm, too calm. Everything you're losing, she said gently, was never yours to begin with. You just spent it. The words sank into the room like ice. Mark blinked. His anger stuttered. What are you talking about? Emily placed the plate on the counter, wiped her hands, and finally turned to face him. Her face was soft, unbothered, almost serene. You never built any of it, she said. You only used it. He stepped closer, breath sharp. Emily, don't play games. I need answers. Right now. She tilted her head slightly. I gave you answers. Then she walked past him, calm as a drifting tide. Mark felt something shift in the air as she passed. A cold truth he didn't yet understand, but would feel soon enough. Don't walk away from me, he demanded. Emily paused for only a second. Then don't pretend you ever looked toward me. Then she disappeared down the hallway. Mark stood in the kitchen, fists tight, breathing fast. He felt something cracking inside him, a rising panic he didn't know how to control. Then a sharp knock cut through the house. Knock, knock, knock. Mark jerked toward the front door. A sheriff stood outside, uniform crisp, expression unreadable. He held a white envelope in his hand. Mark Walker? The sheriff asked. Mark stiffened. Yes? The sheriff extended the envelope. This is for you. You've been formally served. Mark tore it open, breath shaking. His eyes widened as he read the title across the top. Notice of divorce proceedings filed by Emily Hayes Walker. The paper trembled in his hand. His voice cracked. No, she wouldn't. From the hallway, unseen by him, Emily watched. Calm, still. Her eyes did not flinch. And in the distance, another silent step of her plan clicked into place. A court date already scheduled for weeks ahead. Weeks later, the courtroom exploded with noise the moment the bailiff called, All rise! Chairs scraped, voices hushed, and Mark Walker's pulse hammered against his ribs. The air felt too tight, too sharp, as if the walls themselves were judging him. He stood stiffly beside his attorney, sweat breaking across his forehead. His eyes darted around the room, searching for control he no longer possessed. Every second felt like someone squeezing a fist around his throat. And then Emily entered. The noise dropped instantly. She walked in with quiet confidence. Simple clothes, calm face, steady pace. There was no anger in her eyes, no fear, no hesitation. She looked like a woman who had accepted the end long before this moment. By her side was Sarah Collins, her lawyer and closest friend. Smart, sharp, mid-30s, known in several legal circles for being unshakable. Sarah carried a stack of folders and a laptop bag that was far heavier in meaning than weight. Emily took her seat with perfect composure. The intensity of the room swelled, then softened into tense silence as the judge entered. Everyone sat. The case began. Sarah stood first. Your Honor, today we will present evidence of Mrs. Walker's financial independence, the separate nature of her assets, and a detailed accounting showing Mr. Walker contributed nothing to the accumulation of that wealth during the marriage. Mark shifted uncomfortably. His attorney, Mr. Davis, whispered, "Stay calm." Emily remained still. Sarah opened the first folder. Inside were copies of company formation documents, LLC certificates, operating agreements, trust records, all under Emily's maiden name, Hayes, dated from before the company ever generated profit, before Mark was involved in anything related to it, and supported by separate bank accounts that never mixed with his. Sarah spoke clearly. Emily Hayes Walker is the founder and sole owner of Hayes Tech Solutions, currently valued at $150 million. A gasp spread across the courtroom. Mark's stomach dropped so fast he nearly stumbled. He blinked, confused, angry, helpless. She what? He muttered. Sarah continued, unfazed. We will also show that all household assets Mr. Walker believed belonged to him were purchased with Mrs. Walker's separate funding through her trust, not from any income of his. She handed the judge a packet of title deeds, each showing Emily's trust in bold as the owner, with records from years ago. The judge scanned them quietly. Sarah pressed on. Additionally, Your Honor, we will present evidence of Mr. Walker's financial misuse, funds withdrawn from joint accounts for non-marital purposes. Mark's heartbeat exploded in his ears. Non-marital. He knew what that meant. Lily. Sarah connected her laptop to the court monitor. The screen lit up with bank statements, scrolling transfers, digital fingerprints linking Mark to Lily Adams. Mark lunged forward, panic rising. Wait, this is taken out of context. Sarah didn't even look at him. Next, she displayed screenshots of the messages. Are you coming tonight? She won't know. I need you more than her. Mark's face drained of color. Those aren't... Sarah spoke peacefully. The phone records came from his unlocked device, Your Honor, and the account from which he sent the money was funded entirely by Mrs. Walker's separate income. Emily didn't turn toward Mark. She didn't glare. She didn't smirk. She simply watched the evidence roll out like quiet truth finally given oxygen. Mark's attorney tried to speak. Your Honor, Mr. Walker disputes the... But the judge raised a hand. Mr. Walker, were you aware that your wife funded your entire lifestyle for years? Mark's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. She's just a housewife, he blurted. A sharp wave of disapproval rippled through the room. Even the bailiff squinted as if the words offended the lighting. Emily looked down, calm, as if she had expected this exact sentence. The judge leaned forward. That housewife, Mr. Walker, appears, based on the documents before me, to be the sole financial provider in your marriage. Her company and trust were structured and funded as her separate estate, and there is no record of your contribution. Mark felt the room shrinking, trapping him. His chest tightened. She hid things from me. She tricked me. Sarah cut in immediately. It is not a trick to build a company while being ignored, Your Honor. She disclosed none of this to him because he never asked, and because the law does not require her to hand over control of separate property to a spouse who does not contribute. Judge, enough. Mark clamped his mouth shut, but Sarah wasn't done. She reached into her bag and pulled out a thick, heavy folder. Its edges were sharp, its meaning sharper. She handed it directly to Mark's attorney. Mr. Davis frowned as he read the label. Domestically aggressive incidents. Witnesses listed. Mark's heart stopped. His attorney's face went pale. Sarah spoke softly, but every word hit like steel. These are witness statements documenting a pattern of controlling and aggressive behavior toward my client. Emily sat still, eyes lowered. Mark's hand shook as he reached for the folder. Inside were names, dates, short descriptions from neighbors, extended family, and one surprising signature from someone he never expected. Marcia Walker, his own sister. His vision blurred. His world, once loud, confident, arrogant, collapsed into a quiet, cold realization. Emily had walked into this courtroom already 10 steps ahead, and as the judge prepared the final set of questions, something waited behind Sarah's laptop, a piece of evidence not yet revealed, a recording Emily had never shown anyone, not even Sarah. The phone exploded with sound, a non-stop stream of angry buzzing that echoed across the small apartment Lily stayed in. She jumped at the intensity, the vibrations almost rattling the table as Mark's name flashed again and again. "Stop calling me," she hissed under her breath, snatching the phone up. She didn't answer. Not yet. Not until she finished reading the news alert her friend had sent her, the one that froze her stomach and sent a cold wave through her body. High-value divorce case reveals husband lived off wife's fortune. Her heart hit her ribs. Her breath stopped. Mark wasn't rich. He wasn't stable. He wasn't even surviving on his own. He had been living off a woman. And not just any woman, Emily. Lily's hands trembled as she scrolled deeper into the article. Everything Mark told her, the stories of his stress, his responsibility, his supportive role, all lies. The article laid it out clearly. Emily's company, Emily's trust, Emily's house, Mark's misuse of funds. Her phone buzzed again. "Mark," she answered this time, voice sharp. "What is this? Why is your name all over the news?" Mark's voice came fast, frantic. "Lily, it's not what it looks like. Emily is lying. She set me up. You know I'm the one who handled things." She stood up straight, jaw tight. "Handled what? You told me you were the provider. You said you were the one building everything." "I was. At least I was supposed to be." "Lily, please, I just need you. I lost access to my accounts, but it's temporary. I'll fix it." "Just stay." "Temporary?" she repeated, bitterness rising. "You can't even pay your phone bill. I had to send you money last week." His silence was loud. Then Lily said the words that cut him deeper than anything Emily had done. "I'm not going down with a man who lied about everything." "Lily, don't do this. Lily." But she ended the call, blocked him. The phone went silent. Images rushed through her mind in a fast, painful flashback. Mark handing her expensive gifts paid for with Emily's money. Mark taking her out to dinners Emily unknowingly funded. Mark promising he'd take care of her soon, once his business landed. Mark leaning in close, whispering that she was special, while spending another woman's earnings. The truth tasted bitter. She grabbed her purse, pacing the room. Every step felt like a mix of anger and shame twisting together. Then she stopped, looked at her phone, touched the screen carefully. For a long moment, she hesitated, then typed a message to a number she had never contacted before. She had found it in the article's business section, listed under public contact details for Hayes Tech Solutions. Emily's business line. Her fingers moved with cold clarity as she typed, "I don't want him. You can have this trash back." She pressed send. Across town, Emily sat at her desk, reviewing new legal documents with calm, steady focus. Her phone buzzed once. She glanced down, saw the name, read the message. Her expression didn't change, not even a blink. She quietly set the phone face down and returned to her paperwork. Her voice, low and steady, barely above a whisper. Pieces fall exactly where they belong. And as she turned the page, another silent document waited at the top of the stack. The one that would finalize Mark's removal from the house entirely and give her exclusive right to live there alone. Months after the first court hearing, the shouting hit the front yard before the police car even stopped. Mark's voice tore through the air, wild and desperate, as two officers stepped out and walked toward him. "You can't do this! This is my house, my home!" "No, sir," the lead officer said firmly, By order of the court, exclusive occupancy of this property belongs to Emily Hayes Walker. You were served notice weeks ago. Today is your removal date. Mark's rage collapsed into panic. Where am I supposed to go? He yelled, voice cracking. This is unfair. She's lying. She planned this. Inside the house, Emily heard every word, but she didn't flinch. She didn't rush to the window. She didn't hide. She simply tied her hair back with a small band, picked up her purse, and stepped into the hallway. The intensity outside was loud, fierce, overwhelming. But inside her chest, everything was calm. The storm had already passed. This was only the cleanup. She opened the door gently. Mark spun toward her, face red, eyes burning. Emily, tell them to stop. Tell them this house is ours. Her voice was soft, steady. It was never ours, Mark. Mark stepped closer, but one of the officers held up a hand. Mark froze. Emily's eyes didn't hold anger. They held closure. You lived here, she said, but you never saw it. You never cared how it was paid for, or who carried the weight. You just assumed it belonged to you. Mark's breath shook. I can change. Just let me inside, please. His mother and father, who had come that morning to support him and help him pack a few things, rushed across the yard next, stumbling over themselves to reach her. His mother grabbed Emily's arm. Emily, sweet girl, listen, she begged. You don't have to do this. Think about the family. Emily didn't pull away. She didn't argue. She didn't respond at all. Mark's father stepped forward, hands shaking. We made mistakes. We were hard on you. Don't leave him standing out here like this. Again, Emily stayed silent. She looked at them, then at Mark, with a calmness so complete it silenced every plea. The moment stretched like a thin line, delicate, final. Then she stepped past them. No one stopped her. She walked to her car, slipped into the driver's seat and started the engine. The noise from the yard faded behind the closed doors. Mark shouting her name, his family pleading, officers holding him back as they explained, again, that he had to leave the premises today. She stared straight ahead. A slow breath left her lungs. Then her voice, quiet as a whisper, filled the car, carrying the last truth she would ever give him. When you treat a woman as if she's nothing, you should pray she actually is. She put the car in drive and pulled away without looking back. Minutes later, she parked in front of a sleek glass building with a large silver logo across the entrance. Hayes Tech Solutions. Her building. Her empire. The world she built while everyone underestimated her. As she stepped out of the car, the atmosphere felt different. Clean, open, full of possibility. Staff members in the lobby straightened when they saw her walking toward the entrance. A young receptionist, new, nervous, but eager, rushed forward with wide eyes. Good morning, Ms. Hayes, she said, voice full of respect. Welcome back. Emily smiled faintly, soft, knowing, whole. For the first time in years, she felt like her name fit her again. She walked through the lobby, past glass walls and open offices, each step steady and full of quiet power. She reached the elevator, pressed the button, and waited as the doors slid open with a smooth hum. She entered, turned around, and looked out through the lobby's wide windows. Far beyond the roads, far beyond the traffic, far beyond the noise. Mark Walker sat on the curb outside a house he no longer had a right to enter, head in his hands, life in pieces around him. The elevator doors closed. The world shifted, and Emily Hayes rose. She walked into her top-floor office moments later, the view wide and clear behind her. Her assistant placed a stack of new contracts on her desk. Emily touched the top file, the paper crisp beneath her fingers. A small, quiet smile grew on her lips. Not from revenge, from freedom. A new beginning waited for her, sharp, bright, and open. And just as she prepared to sign the next deal of her life, a soft vibration from her phone lit up the screen. A new opportunity, a new partnership, a new chapter, because her story was far from over. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed creating it. Like, share, and comment on the lessons you've learned. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. See you in my next video.